After his promotion to director, my husband said, "Now my salary is mine." I agreed, but for 12 years I was a dedicated wife. Silent, present, always in the shadow of a man who loved to feel in control. When he was promoted to director, I thought for an instant that perhaps things would change. And they did. Just not in the way he imagined. The phrase I heard that day remained marked on me. "Now my salary is only mine." Spoken with pride, with coldness. It was at that moment that I understood that this was not just a change of position, but a turning point in my life. And that was when everything began. What you are about to read is a story of silent overcoming, strategic choices, and a woman who refused to be erased. A story that speaks of dignity, courage, and the strength that lives in the silence of those who observe and wait. I'm very happy to have you here. Follow my story to the end and comment on the city where you are watching from. I want to know how far my voice has managed to reach. Patrick walked through the door with a smile stamped on his face, the kind that screams victory before any explanation. He threw the keys on the table and announced his promotion like someone expecting applause. But he did not look into my eyes for even a second. He said only that now the salary was only his. I remained still, listening without reacting, feeling the coldness of his words freeze the air between us. While he boasted, letting out phrases about male freedom and the burden of supporting someone unproductive, I took a deep breath. His tone was mocking, as if my choices and silence over the years were a weakness. He thought he maintained me. He thought I was dependent. And perhaps that was exactly what made him feel so far above me. In the kitchen, he opened a beer and toasted alone. He smiled, as if he had won a battle against me, as if he had finally gotten rid of a burden. I said nothing. I remained firm, present, like someone watching a play performed for the 1000th time. The difference is that this time I was not just watching. I was taking notes on every gesture, every word. It was in that instant that I realized he had never truly seen me. He never wanted to. To Patrick, I was just the background of his own narrative. And perhaps because of that, my next words came out as easily as breathing. "That is fine, Patrick. I agree with you." I went up the stairs without rushing, like someone returning to the stage after waiting calmly backstage. I closed the bedroom door with care and walked to the dresser, where my cell phone rested. I typed a short, cold and objective message. "Confirm for today at 9 p.m. The sound of sending it was almost a whisper of relief. The time of waiting had ended. I approached the mirror and faced my own image. No tears, no trembling, no doubt. My face revealed the peace of someone who had drawn up a plan for years and finally pressed the first button. I knew what was coming. And no, it was not revenge. It was justice, perhaps even liberation. I ran my hand through my hair, adjusting a fallen lock. I thought about the years wasted being underestimated, silenced, and molded to fit into the small box in which he wanted to keep me. How many times did I hear that I was lucky to have him? That a lucky woman has a husband who pays for everything. Luck? No. Blindness. But I could already see. Every memory of his arrogance returned with clarity. The interruptions, the condescending looks, the conversations he never truly heard. On the outside, I was the modest wife. On the inside, I was the architect of my own rescue. And now the first foundation was being raised. It was time to put the pieces in place. Patrick left shortly after, wearing the linen shirt he always kept for special occasions. He said he was going to celebrate with friends, to toast to the new phase. He smiled at me with disdain before slamming the door, as if leaving behind something disposable. I remained motionless until I heard the noise of the car disappear at the end of the street. With calm steps, I walked to the built-in closet in the bedroom. I opened the side door and unlocked the safe behind the clothes. Inside rested the true heart of my plan. A dossier with separate folders, each one named with precision. Information, dates, statements, powers of attorney. Nothing there was random. I took the folders with care, almost with affection. That was the result of sleepless nights, silent like my pain. Every organized sheet was an unspoken answer. A contained scream that now gained form in paper and strategy. My smile was slight but sincere. I closed the safe with a firm click and took a deep breath. That was the night when everything would begin to change. There would be no more shadow, no more invisibility, no more silent humiliation. I did not want applause. I wanted peace, justice, and space to exist without hiding myself. The night is going to be long. The kitchen smelled of rice with vegetables. A simple, nutritious dish, with the discreet flavor of my childhood. I prepared everything calmly, like someone performing a ritual. The small pots, the aligned cutlery, the table set for two. It was almost ironic, given what I knew was coming. Patrick arrived like a storm. He carried in his arms a bottle of expensive wine and an inflated ego. He looked at the food with contempt and laughed. He said that it looked like cafeteria food and that now he was used to restaurants that serve dishes with names in French. He spoke endlessly, mocking those who do not have refined taste. I simply served the rice in silence. My gestures were calculated, serene, as if that were just another night. Inside, peace enveloped me. A peace that came from the certainty of control. Every comment of his was expected. Every laugh predicted. Did not affect me anymore. I sat at the table across from him. He raised his glass as if toasting to his own reflection. And then he let out the question. Do you really think this is dinner? I looked into his eyes, still without answering. Because, in truth, his dinner had not even begun. Do you really think this is dinner? The doorbell rang with two sharp rings. Patrick frowned but did not move. I went to the door and opened it, without any surprise. Donna entered like a hurricane in high heels, followed by Ashley, balancing empty designer bags like trophies. They did not even pretend courtesy. I hope you have caviar, said Donna, taking off her coat and throwing it over the back of the sofa. Ashley looked around and complained about the decoration, calling it suffocating. They acted as if they owned the house. As if I were the temporary employee who hadn't done her job right. They sat down without an invitation. Donna asked if the wine was imported. Ashley asked for a larger mirror in the hallway. Every phrase was a stab covered in silk. And even so, I continued serving. Rice. Vegetables. Silence. Not even a decent wine, Helena? While everyone spoke loudly, laughed, and ignored me, I remained standing facing the table. The scene was almost theatrical. Patrick in the center laughing with pride. Donna criticizing every detail. Ashley taking selfies as if she were a celebrity. And I, the motionless figure in the corner of the room. When Patrick commented that this was the liveliest night of the month, I could not avoid a slight smile. I looked directly at him and with a calm voice announced, "Rest assured, your dinner is arriving." For a second, silence fell like a heavy curtain. Patrick looked at me with a mixture of doubt and discomfort. Donna laughed, thinking it was sarcasm. Ashley made a comment about me having ordered real food. But I continued firm, looking into his eyes. Because I knew what was coming next. And then the doorbell rang. The doorbell rings. I opened the door without hesitation, aware of every step of that night. Patrick expected a delivery person with bags full of some expensive food, perhaps Japanese. But the person who entered was Mr. Coleman, impeccable in his dark suit, followed by two associates who carried silver briefcases with gleaming metal clasps. None of them said a word. They just entered as if that room had been their office for years. The silence spread like smoke. Patrick stood up immediately, his look confused and slightly irritated. "What is happening here?" he murmured, but no one answered. Ashley let out a nervous little laugh and asked if it was some prank. Donna huffed loudly, standing up from the sofa. "This is ridiculous. The food hasn't even arrived." She looked at me, expecting an explanation. But my expression was as serene as before. The night was still only beginning. The three men walked to the dining table, ignoring the rice and vegetables that were still warm. It was as if time had frozen in that room. Patrick looked from one face to another, trying to find meaning in the scene. Ashley crossed her arms, clearly uncomfortable. Donna fiddled with her wine glass as if deciding whether to throw it at someone. I simply walked to my chair and sat down calmly, signaling that they could continue. Coleman opened one of the briefcases with a dry, meticulous click. The sound echoed through the room like the first bell of a judgment. He took out a stack of documents, organized them, and extended them to Patrick with the coldness of someone who has delivered bad news hundreds of times. "Is this some prank?" Patrick took the first document reluctantly, his eyes narrowing as he read the first lines. He turned the page. And another. With each new paper, the color of his face disappeared a little more. "Property deeds, bank contracts, vehicle registrations, investment statements. Everything registered in the name of Helena Brooks. Everything, including the house where we were. Ashley leaned in to try to see better, but Patrick held the papers tightly, as if trying to hide them from reality. Coleman, impassive, opened the second briefcase and removed a thinner folder. Inside, notarized copies, stamps, signatures. Patrick shook his head as if he wanted to deny what he was reading. "But this is impossible," he murmured, almost without a voice. Donna approached, trying to take the documents. "There must be some mistake. This house has been in the Brooks family for decades." I kept silent, observing them with the same look I used for years to swallow every humiliation. Ashley widened her eyes and stepped back a few paces. "Did you know about this, Helena?" she asked, as if she still considered me innocent or oblivious to my own assets. I took a deep breath, in no rush to answer. The truth was already being shouted in letters and numbers before them. There was no way to run anymore. Patrick threw the papers on the table and ran his hand through his hair. His shirt collar, previously impeccable, was now crumpled, sweaty. I stood up slowly and took 3 firm steps to the center of the room. "You are living in something that does not belong to you," I announced with the tranquility of someone merely confirming the obvious. Donna yelled. Ashley tried to snatch the papers back but was restrained firmly by one of the lawyers. And Patrick? He just stayed there, seated, staring at nothing. "House, cars, bank accounts." Donna was still screaming behind me, but her voice already sounded distant. The world they knew was beginning to crumble. And I just watched the sandcastle collapse as I always knew it would. "You have absolutely nothing." Before anyone had time to react, one of the associates took a new folder and placed it carefully on the table. "Now let's talk about accumulated values," he said, opening the document like a surgeon revealing a terminal diagnosis. It was a spreadsheet with hundreds of lines, categorized with precision. Expenses for parties, luxury hotels, airline tickets in business class. Very expensive gifts. Trips that Patrick claimed were for work. Everything listed with dates and receipts. The columns continued. Complete renovation of Donna's room, including a jacuzzi, subscription to decoration magazines for Ashley, online courses, designer clothes, and even a consulting service for social media that never had a return. With each new item, Patrick's eyes seemed to sink further into the paper. When he reached the end, there was the total in bold. $213,472.68. He squeezed the paper with his hands, his chin trembling, and asked in a low voice, "All this in my name?" The room fell silent for an instant that seemed eternal. Ashley sat down slowly, her face pale. Donna turned to me, trying to regain authority. "You are punishing us for everything, aren't you? This is a cruel trap. We are your family." I looked directly at her. Family that sucks, manipulates, and destroys is not family. It is a burden that one leaves on the side of the road. Patrick stood up, furious, accusing me of having plotted everything. But his anger no longer intimidated me. I faced him firmly. "You only signed what you wanted. You used everything you wanted. And you ignored all the signs." Coleman remained standing, impassive. Ashley began to cry softly. And I approached the table, lightly touched my fingers on the spreadsheet and asked, "Do you want to know who sponsored it?" The room remained in silence. I walked slowly to the sideboard and took a small binder. It was discreet, but there my true identity was registered. During all these years, I was a silent investor in companies in 5 countries, including the one where you work. Patrick let out a cynical laugh, clearly desperate. But the sweat on his face betrayed that there was no more ground beneath his feet. "Who do you think paid for the weekend dinners? The getaways with friends? The renovations your mother demanded? It was all part of the experiment. I wanted to see how far your arrogance would go." The words came out of me with clarity, with the strength I had repressed for years. Ashley sobbed. Donna stared fixedly at the floor. Patrick, motionless, seemed not to know where he was anymore. I approached him, maintaining a steady gaze. "You called yourself the provider, the savior, the man of the house. But everything you built was with my money." And then, to seal that moment, I revealed what he feared hearing most. What placed him below even the woman he thought he could silence. "I am the CEO of the Brooks Group." Patrick stood up like a cornered animal. with his eyes wide and breathing accelerated. Are you saying all this is my fault? That I was promoted out of pity? His voice trembled, but not from insecurity, from wounded pride. I sat in the armchair, adjusting my skirt calmly. I looked directly at him and said, "You were promoted because I asked. I wanted to see what you would do with power." And he did exactly what I feared. He paced from one side to the other, trying to understand. "This is madness. I conquered that position," he shouted, as if shouting to himself. But there was no one there to validate his illusion anymore. "You had the chance to share, to walk alongside, but you preferred to look down from above." Patrick stopped, looking at me as if seeing me for the first time. "You tested me?" he murmured. "Yes, and he failed. Everything you built in the last few months was a castle on sand. I just waited for the right tide for it to collapse." He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Perhaps because deep down he always knew. He knew his success was a shadow projected by something greater, by someone greater. He just didn't want to admit it. He was so busy winning a game that he never realized he wasn't the one moving the pieces. The truth was finally before him. Not shouted, but spoken in a calm and irrevocable tone. I did not destroy him. I just let him bury himself. It was a character experiment, Patrick. The silence was interrupted by the shrill ring of the landline phone. I stood up with tranquility, walked to the device, and answered. "Helena Brooks," I replied. I activated the speakerphone. On the other end of the line, a deep and paused voice answered. "Good evening, Mrs. Brooks. This is Mr. Henderson." Patrick turned pale. He knew that voice well. It was the president of the company where he worked. "As requested, I am here to confirm that Mr. Patrick Brooks will be terminated from the company immediately." Patrick tried to intervene, stammering a protest. "But this is a misunderstanding. What is happening?" Henderson did not answer him. He continued speaking only to me. "You warned us in advance, madam, and after internal reevaluation, we decided to end the relationship with Mr. Brooks with immediate effect." Henderson's voice was cutting like a blade. Patrick was standing but seemed to sink into the floor. Donna leaned back on the sofa, her face contracted. Ashley covered her mouth with her hand, completely in shock. Patrick insisted. "I am a director. I have results. You cannot." Henderson interrupted him without altering his tone. "It was a pleasure collaborating with you, Mrs. Brooks. We will be in contact to formalize the papers." And the call ended. The silence that followed was deafening. A void that none of those present knew how to fill. "Mr. Brooks is officially terminated." Patrick fell onto the sofa as if his legs could no longer support his own weight. The arrogance evaporated, leaving only the common man he always tried to hide. Henderson hadn't finished. The voice returned, implacable, cold like the truth. "And not only terminated. From this moment on, the name Patrick Brooks is on the industry blacklist. He will not work in any partner company again. Nor will he have access to leadership positions." The impact of the words was like an earthquake. Donna covered her face with both hands, sinking into a muffled lament. Ashley looked at the floor, unresponsive, just whispering, "This cannot be happening." Patrick put his hands to his head, like someone trying to hold the world that is falling apart. But it was useless. Nothing remained of the pedestal on which he had placed himself. Erase his name from the records. I stood up slowly and walked to the drawer of the sideboard. I opened it calmly, as if looking for something ordinary. Inside rested an old brown leather wallet worn by time. It was the same one I used when I started my first business years ago. I opened it and removed 3 $10 bills, carefully folded. I returned to Patrick and extended the bills. "For the taxi," I said with the same serenity as someone serving tea. He looked at me, confused, as if he didn't understand the delicate irony of that gesture. "What is this?" he asked with a low voice. "You said your money was only yours. Here is my gift. $30. More than enough to leave here and start your independent journey." For a second I thought he would cry. But even that seemed to have been torn from him. Only the shadow remained of a man who no longer knew who he was. Donna stood up with difficulty, her eyes red with fury and humiliation. Ashley approached without saying a word, shoulders slumped, carrying the designer bags now empty. None of them looked at me. They just walked to the door like two defeated figures. I did not accompany them. I did not say goodbye. I did not stand up. I just observed. The house became lighter as they crossed the threshold. Ashley still tried to maintain some pride. This isn't going to stay like this, Helena. Donna spat on the floor. The last act of someone who does not accept losing. But none of that touched me. I remained seated, watching in silence. After all, what they despised most, my calm, was now what they feared most. Good luck with your independence. I closed the door slowly, feeling the air of the house reorganize around their absence. As if everything finally returned to the right place. I went back to the table, cleared the plates, and put away the cutlery with care. Then, I served the rice with vegetables I had prepared hours before again. A simple dish, almost symbolic. But that night it had the taste of the freedom I had waited for so long. I opened a bottle of wine, the same one Patrick had mocked earlier, and poured myself a glass. I drank slowly, feeling the flavor fill my mouth, my body, my soul. It was sweet. It was bitter. It was real. I sat alone and began to eat, not with sadness, but with the serenity of someone who survived the war without needing to raise her voice. That was not a meal. It was a silent celebration of my own existence. My gaze scanned the room. The empty armchair, the set table, the soft light entering through the window. For the first time in a long time, the silence did not hurt. It embraced me. It was mine. That night I did not need answers nor validations. Just my peace. And it finally arrived. They have nowhere to go. I finished my dinner without haste. I turned off the lights, left the glass in the sink, and went to the balcony. The sky was clear, the stars visible. I sat with a blanket over my shoulders and a new glass of wine in my hands. I allowed myself to close my eyes for a moment. There was no more tension in my body. Only relief. The world outside could keep turning, for now my universe was complete. Because in that instant, in that house that now breathed with my energy, I finally belonged to myself entirely. There was no one left to prove anything to. Nothing to hide. Neither fear nor doubts. Just me. Finally at peace. News traveled fast in the market. Patrick spent the first few days trying to call all his old contacts. Directors, colleagues, even subordinates. No one answered twice. Some said they were in transition, others that they couldn't get involved. But the truth was only one. He was on the blacklist. The same one I helped structure based on ethical principles he ignored. While he sank in the negatives, Donna complained about the allowance that had been cut. What right does she have to do this? She said, as if she still had some kind of dominion over what wasn't hers. Ashley, in turn, had all her cards blocked. The expensive bags now slept in the closet, untouched. Food was rationed, and the power cut for 3 consecutive days. The rent? 3 months overdue. The rented house, which they chose alone out of pride, was crumbling little by little. Leaks peeling walls, bills piled up in the kitchen. That trio who for so long lived on appearances, now shared the same roof with the reality they always denied. I did not watch them. I just waited. I knew that time would do what no word could manage. And the time arrived. One night, I heard the stifled scream coming from my assistant's call. Patrick had been served an eviction notice. Despair overflowed in the tone of voice. And even so, pride insisted on keeping up appearances. Until when I asked myself, we don't even have money for rent. Forced by hunger and urgency, Patrick accepted a job as a furniture mover in a small moving company. He left home before the sun rose, returned when the sky was already dark. His hands, once always clean and well kept, now displayed calluses and open wounds. On the first day, he was recognized by an ex-colleague who laughed loudly. "That's what you get for thinking you're untouchable." He lowered his head, pretending not to hear. But inside I know something broke. He carried heavy boxes for hours, under stifling and relentless heat. His back burned, his body screamed for rest. During the break, he locked himself in the warehouse bathroom and cried. Silently. With no one to console him. No one to admire or flatter him. Just him, his reflection in the mirror, and the reality that crushed him. The next day, he returned to work without complaining. There was no more room for vanity. Every object lifted was a reminder that his fall had no cushions. It was raw cement, hitting the ground with the force of years of contempt. He began to avoid any eye contact. When someone called him by name, he pretended not to hear. He preferred anonymity to shame. And I just observed from afar in silence. I knew that this was the only way that perhaps one day, he might learn something. But at that moment he was not learning. He was just surviving. Was this his reign? The final tragedy came on any given morning. Donna was walking on the sidewalk when she fainted. Ashley screamed for help, but no one stopped. Expensive clothes didn't buy attention anymore. Patrick ran to her, trembling, trying to revive her. He called for emergency services. He called twice. No ambulance arrived. Their address no longer had priority. And, with recent history, there was no credit even left in the system. Desperate, Patrick looked for something in his pocket. He found the cell phone, old, scratched, with a cracked screen. He hesitated. But reality hit harder than pride. With trembling fingers he typed the name he had avoided for weeks. Helena. He knew she was the only one who could still do something. And that perhaps she would still answer. Call Helena. When the car arrived, I got out even before the door was opened by anyone. The private ambulance parked next to the sidewalk and 2 paramedics got out quickly. Donna was placed on a stretcher and taken with care. Ashley, pale, held her mother's hand without saying a word. Patrick tried to approach me, but I extended my hand in the air, blocking any attempt at approach. "Thank you for coming," he said, looking at the ground. I replied without hesitation. "I came for her. Not for you." He nodded slowly, like someone accepting a sentence. Ashley lowered her eyes. There was something new in her face, shame, perhaps for the first time. I got into the car and followed to the hospital without saying anything else. The past was sitting beside me, but I did not intend to give it a voice anymore. At the hospital, the situation was controlled quickly. Donna was stable. Hypoglycemia, stress, poor diet. Nothing that a little responsibility wouldn't prevent. Patrick waited in the reception area. I stood up, took an envelope from my purse and handed it to him. It was the bill paid in full. But there was also something else, a contract. He opened it, read it and turned pale. "You are going to work on one of my construction sites," I explained. "As a mover. No privileges. Minimum wage. Normal registration. Full time." He didn't react immediately. Only later he stammered. "You want to humiliate me?" I replied calmly. "No. I want you to conquer the independence you demanded so much. Minimum wage and sweat." Patrick signed the contract with trembling hands. Not out of anger but out of surrender. He knew it was that or nothing. Donna, already awake, did not speak a word. She just observed me, perhaps seeing now the woman she never deigned to understand. Ashley also said nothing, but I noticed the tears were there, about to fall. The mask of superiority was cracking. I closed my purse, adjusted my coat, and headed for the exit. No one accompanied me. No one had the strength. As I walked down the white and silent corridor, I felt I had closed a cycle. A long, painful, and necessary chapter. For the first time, I left a hospital without the weight of guilt. Only with the certainty that everything was done with firmness, but also with justice. And when the automatic door closed behind me, I left behind not just an episode, but 3 people who, by their own choice, sank in arrogance. Now yes, each one with their own money. He started working at the construction site the very next Monday. He carried bags of cement that seemed to weigh double what they really weighed. The sun did not forgive, and the rain, when it came, was not relief but additional weight. No one there knew who he had been. And perhaps that anonymity was what hurt the most. Every strike of the hammer was a memory. Every mix of concrete, a reminder of what he lost. The food at home came down to rice and eggs when they were lucky. Donna and Ashley fought all the time, mainly at night, when frustration overflowed. The summer heat was unbearable, and the old fan made more noise than wind. I tracked the payments with precision. Punctual, cold, automatic. Without a note, without a gesture, without an error. Exactly as he had treated me for years. I did not feel pleasure in seeing him in that condition, but I didn't feel pity either. That was a consequence, not revenge. Patrick, who one day demanded independence, now learned that freedom also requires responsibility, and that the fall is more painful when one thinks one will never fall. The days passed, dragged out. He left work without looking anyone in the eyes. The only thing he carried with more weight than the bags was himself. Time was erasing what remained of him. His clothes lost color, his eyes lost shine, and even his posture was no longer the same. The man who walked upright now dragged his feet. With each day I disappeared more to the world. And to myself. Ashley, without money, began selling second-hand clothes on the internet. Those same empty designer bags now became ghosts hanging on hangers. Donna criticized every step, saying that was humiliating. "You expose yourself too much," she grumbled. But the truth is she hated seeing her daughter make any effort. The empire of appearances was officially in ruins. Patrick watched everything in silence. He no longer had the strength to try to mediate. He began writing in an old notebook, pages and pages that mixed memories with regrets. He wrote letters he would never send. In some, he apologized. In others, he tried to explain what not even he understood. The pen trembled, the handwriting became crooked. But he continued. Like someone trying to glue the pieces of his own dignity. Sometimes he wrote for hours in absolute silence. Other times he let the pen drop and just stared at the wall for long minutes. No one interrupted him. No one listened to him. It was a man alone with his guilt. The table where he once commanded dinners now served as a support for hanging clothes. And the sofa where Donna watched soap operas turned into a pile of torn cushions. And he there, in the middle of the chaos, discovered that the cruelest loneliness is not physical. It is that which installs itself inside one's own soul. The last drop of dignity drained away along with those words. On a cloudy late afternoon, he decided to go out alone. He walked to the old company building, like someone looking for a mirror where he might still recognize himself. He wore a crumpled shirt and dirty sneakers. With every step he relived moments of glory that no longer seemed real. Upon arriving at the entrance, a new security guard asked for his name. When Patrick answered, the man just closed the gate firmly. "You cannot enter, sir," he said dryly without hesitation. Patrick insisted, asking if they remembered him. But the security guard just turned his face away. He stood there, stopped for a few seconds under the fine drizzle. Then he turned and began to walk back. The rain increased with every step. No one offered shelter. No one asked his name. He walked all the way home and entered without saying a word. That night, for the first time, I realized he had become invisible even to himself. He was no longer seen as a boss, husband, son, nor even as a man. He was just a shape trying to exist. That night, I accepted that I had lost everything. It was night when my phone rang. On the other end, Patrick's trembling voice. "It's Donna. She is bad again." I didn't ask for details. I just activated the emergency plan and sent my private medical team. When I arrived, the scene was the same as weeks ago. A stifling apartment, old furniture, and pleading eyes. The difference was that this time there were no masks. My team stabilized Donna quickly. They monitored her pressure, applied medication, and ensured she was out of danger. Patrick tried to explain what happened, to justify the delay in asking for help. But I raised my hand, interrupting him with the firmness of someone who owed nothing anymore. "I didn't come to hear you, Patrick. I came to resolve it." He lowered his eyes, feeling the weight of every syllable. Ashley remained silent in a corner of the room, curled up, as if she were no longer part of that plot. Patrick took a step forward as if he wanted to say more, but gave up. The team collected the equipment and prepared to leave. Before leaving, I did what I had promised myself. I handed over the last symbol of our history. I opened my purse and removed the same old wallet, the dark leather one worn at the edges. I took out 3 $10 bills and extended them to him. "For the taxi," I said. Patrick took the money with trembling hands. He looked at the bills and then at me. But this time there was no answer. "I didn't come for you, Patrick. I came for her." He did not try to retaliate, nor question. He just nodded, almost like a mute apology. The words once so sharp were now scarce. The arrogance had turned to dust. I turned around and walked to the door. Before leaving, I looked at him one more time. "You asked for independence. It is here. $30. And the life you always said you wanted." Ashley still watched me. But not even she had the courage to say anything. Donna was being monitored by one of the paramedics. I did not say goodbye. I just kept my last promise. In that place, nothing held me anymore. Everything that had been pain was now closure. A period that did not need drama. I closed the door calmly and took a deep breath. It was you who asked for independence. It is served. At home, I lit a scented candle and prepared hot tea. The balcony awaited me with its light breeze and welcoming silence. I sat in the rocking chair, covering my legs with a light blanket. The sky was clear finally. No cloud. No threat. For the first time in years, the air seemed completely mine. In the house next door, figuratively speaking, Patrick counted the $30 on the empty table. He looked at the walls without paintings, at the corners without furniture, at the windows without curtains. That was the freedom he always demanded. But now he understood that freedom without respect, without truth, without love, is just loneliness. And that no one can pay for with money. While he stared at the void, I sipped my tea with serenity. The freedom I sought was different. Silent, firm, and full of peace. And that was how it ended, with $30 and no pride. Today the house is silent. But it is a different silence from the one I lived for so many years. It is not made of painful absences, nor of swallowed words. It is a silence full of peace, of presence, of me. I walk through the rooms with a lightness I never felt before. Every space has my rhythm. Every wall my story. Now I no longer need to lower my tone to fit into anyone's life. The woman who once served at the table in silence is the same one who today commands meetings with leaders of multinational companies. The difference? Now everyone listens to me. And even when I don't speak, my presence is felt. I didn't need to shout. I just needed to wait for the right time. Today, I know that my greatest strength was always the patience that sustained me, while the world tried to make me invisible. Sometimes they ask me if I regret anything. I smile. Because there is no regret in having respected my own time. In having loved even when I wasn't loved as I deserved. In having believed even when everything pushed me to the opposite. I learned that true power is not in winning with anger, but in triumphing with firmness and serenity. And that was how I rebuilt my life. Step by step in silence. Until the world fell silent to hear me. If you arrived here, I want you to know you can also start over. It doesn't matter if they made you believe you are not capable. It doesn't matter how much time has passed. While there is a breath of courage, there is a way back to yourself. Because in the end, life always rewards those who choose to walk with dignity. And I chose. Now I am curious about you who listen to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you gone through something similar? Support the channel, subscribe, like, comment, and share this video. I am leaving on the end screen another story that you will also like, and it will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until the next video.